episode 80 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So, this week, in preparation for how shitty the main male character in this book is, and neither of us remembered him to be as shitty as he is. And I've done many rereads. This isn't my first, second, third. I listen to these books. I reread them. Many times. It's a surprise.
Yeah. Same. I obviously have not read them as much as you have, but I've read them quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I am. And I see online, I see him get a lot of hate. And I'm like, why? He's awesome.
He's perfect.
This is why.
Yeah.
I totally read this with rose-colored glasses or something because...
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a fantastic person.
No.
In this.
No, he's not. So, in honor of that, we are talking, and I feel like this is a tiny bit of a spoiler if you have not read past the chapters we're reading this week, and if you haven't read any other books in the series, but I think you'd get there. But it's enemies to lovers versus friends to lovers. What would you prefer? And I'm gonna preface it for you, Kristen, before we start, with the immediate thought that I had when I read these words. Was enemies to lovers is the Darkling and Elena, and friends to lovers is Mal and Elena. And what are you gonna choose? What are you gonna choose? And if you choose,
I wonder.
If you're gonna choose wrong, you gotta explain it for that specific book. No. We can also just go from
do you know what though? I think I'm more of an enemies to lovers than a friends to lovers.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've read and what I enjoy the most, they seem to be enemies to lovers. Because ACOTAR is enemies to lovers twice, 2 times.
2 times.
Yeah. This is friends to love or enemies to lovers.
Yeah.
Fourth Wing, which I just finished.
You cannot. I haven't started yet. I'm going to take my headphones off now.
Okay. That's also enemies to lovers and amazing.
I can read your lips. It's not your fault.
Why were you looking?
I just had to. I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it's just there's a lot of enemies to lovers that I enjoy. And I not that I dislike friends to lovers, because there are times when I like it. Ron and Hermione did a friends to lovers thing, and I liked that.
Yes.
That's really the only...
That's the only one I could think of.
It's the main one that I can think of off the top of my head.
That is the token friends to lovers. And then J.K. Rowling came out and was like, I think she should have ended up with her... No, Harry.
Which is bullshit.
Yeah. So, yeah. She's definitely wrong there, but
yeah.
I just can't think of any other friends.
I'm thinking of Jacob and Bella Swan, but they don't end up together, but they're friends and they have a romantic connection.
His mother-in-law.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've read a ton of Nora Roberts that have been friends to lovers. Childhood friends that grow apart and then they encounter each other again one day and sparks fly.
Yeah, but even that is estranged friends. There's a difference between friends, and like maybe I don't think I seek them out, and I think that's kind of the problem. But like I haven't really read many books that are like friends, and then you're like, oh shit, I'm in love with this person, which is kind of what like Ron and Hermione was, and I kind of loved it for that. Like I did appreciate that was a thing.
I'm trying to think now, because like, what are we considering friends to lovers? Are we considering two people meeting, developing a connection, and then realizing later that it's attraction, or are we talking before the book starts, they're already established as friends?
I think both is fine, because like enemies is clearly different. So like anything other than you hate each other after your first initial meeting is like also enemies to lovers can be done poorly.
Yes.
And like this comes from a Hallmark loving gal who is a big fan of most Hallmark movies. Yeah. But all of them, and then he spilled a coffee on me and I swore to hate him for the rest of my life. And you're like, but why? This seems dumb.
There was a series, and it came out some years ago. It's over on my bookshelf, but I can't see it from here because I have terrible eyesight. And they made a movie out of it. Okay. And the movie did not hit well. It had Rue in it.
Hunger Games?
Hunger Games Rue. It was like her first like grown-up role.
Oh shit! Remember? You mean the actress? You don't mean like I thought you forgot the name of Hunger Games and were trying to explain Hunger Games to me with Rue.
No, the actress who plays Rue. It was like her first like I'm not a teenager anymore, or I'm not a child anymore, like teenager role. Okay. And I'm trying to remember what the series is called, but like all these kids develop a disease, but it's not a disease, but it gives them powers. So like to keep everyone safe, the government puts them all in these camps and codes them based on how dangerous they are. So like anything like yellow is okay, blue is okay, but if you're orange, you're dead. Like they'll just straight up kill you. And if you're red, you're dead. They're just gonna straight up kill you. And like none of the parents know what goes on in the camps, and like the camps are terrible. And this girl like breaks out. And she meets this, like, ragtag group of kids on the run that are evading the camps. And her and the dude, like, fall for each other. But, like, it's a slow burn. So, like, are we considering that a friends to lovers? Because they're not enemies. But they don't really know each other. And it's, like, attraction off the bat.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Like... Yeah. Oh, my God. Like, I might actually have to get up and go get...
I've looked her up, and I'm trying to look through her movies to see if I can figure out what you're talking about. The Darkest Minds?
Yes! Yes!
The Darkest Minds?
Yes! Actually? Yes.
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
So, yeah.
It's also... Obviously, I pick enemies to lovers as well, but I also love an enemies to lovers when... The female main character hates the male main character, and the male main character is like, I'm in love with you and I know I've been in love with you forever. Like, and she thinks that they're enemies, and he's like, we're not. Haha. Which is also Akatar. But it's all it's many of the it's many of the books, because it's such a trope, but I also love that too.
Yeah. I'm not going to complain about most tropes, to be honest. Like, most of those, like, they all have, like, they all give me the feels sometimes, like, you know.
Well, if something's well written, you're going to love it, even if it is a trope that you're like, I don't like this trope, and then you read it and you're like, oh, but it's so well done. I can't hate it in this instance.
Yeah. I really love, though, like, in the enemies to lovers, like, I really love, like, the, kind of like what you said, the obvious, like, the dude doesn't hate her and, like, loves her, but still tries to be surly about it.
Yeah.
Just still trying oh, I'm bad, I'm mean.
Yeah.
But then he'll open the door for her and make sure freak out if she's hurt. But it's still I'm mean, I'm bad, I'm evil. But yet, are you okay? I'll carry you to the nurse.
Who hurt you?
Yeah.
All those tropes. Yeah. I'm when the guy falls first and hard, fuck, am I not in love with that?
So good.
It's so good.
If only the whole Darkling thing had stuck. What a different series we would have had.
I know. My niece is on the 3rd book now, and she's like, I just can't finish it. And I'm fair. You can read Six of Crows, but there's no romance, which I'm fine with giving it to her because she's a child. But she also just wants to read the romance books, and I'm I can't tell her she's wrong.
No,
she's read Red, White, and Royal Blue. I can't tell her she can't read the 3rd book in the Throne of Glass series. There's not even that much in it, but no. I was which is this one? But I was originally oh, she can't read this, and then my sister was I have recently listened to Red, White, and Royal Blue audiobook, and it is pornographic. I'm yes, when you're thinking about your 12-year-old daughter reading it, I'm I didn't tell her to read it. She just told me she read it, and I said, I did too. Yeah. I'm I'm sorry. I understand. And I can't help it. I'm she's not allowed to listen to this podcast until she is, I don't know,
16? I know. It's weird when it's your family.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. Well,
my sister listens.
Yeah.
And I get texts sometimes. But mostly she just talks at us.
Which I'm fine with
she's
too.
Listening.
Yeah.
Anyway, by the way, guys, we are going to start putting a poll up on Spotify for our Would You Rather. So you guys can answer and let us know what you would rather. It's just going to be on Spotify right now because they're the only platform that lets us do polls.
Yeah.
But
it's fun. We would love to know if you would prefer enemies to lovers or friends to lovers. And also, if you are a friends to lovers lover, please tell us some books because I'm drawing a complete blank and I don't know if it's just where my brain is now or if yeah
I'd love a good friends to lovers. Anyway,
good point. So we're gonna get into it. As always, just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone and things might get saucy. So it is our 2nd week with Heir of Fire. We're doing chapters 15 to 26. And last week, we obviously were going from character to character, but Manon has decided that she wants Titus, a brutal wyvern that the witches will be able to fly on, and they're working with the king in exchange for the wyvern. So after they fight for the king, they get to keep the wyverns. It's a good deal.
The wyverns, I don't know if it's been sort of verified for us yet. From my understanding, the wyverns are created, right? They were made from
the king made them through magic and bullshit.
Oh, okay.
He's been apparently working on them for years or something. I don't know if we got that before now, but
so it's like a Dr. Frankenstein situation.
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting.
Chaol currently is going to go look for some dirt on Aedion to keep his parties under wrap and stop the king from looking too closely at him. And Celaena literally just got attacked by unknown creatures that were wearing an unknown creature, one that was wearing an onyx neck band that made her relive her worst memories, her parents, and Nehemia's deaths. So...
And Rowan don't care.
He doesn't give a fuck. He's being a real piece of shit. Yeah. So this week we start with Chaol's point of view. He's meeting with his father in his office, in Chaol's office. And he's kind of like looking at his office with new eyes because he knows his father is judging it. And his father's a piece of shit. If you don't remember from last book, I'm going to tell you now, he is.
Yes.
But his office, he starts thinking like he knows his office isn't much. But he and Celaena had used that desk, and you're like, they fucked up the desk, and that's what he's thinking of. And you're like...
You're about to go meet with your father.
Yeah, that's not what you should be thinking about.
Although, when you do that in a location, it's pretty hard to think about anything else.
Yeah, but if it's your office, and it's somebody that is gone, like, that is unfortunate. And somebody who, like, scarred your face, oh.
But he's still in love with her.
He is. This is another thing that is weird about the, like, whole dynamic. It's like, he's still in love with her. She cannot be in love with him because she hates herself too much. And
but also hates him.
Yeah, of course. But she hates herself more. But she does hate him. So it's like, in her mind, their relationship is an explosive disaster and everything is fucked. And in his mind, like, they could maybe fix it. And I think that is part of the issue going forward. Because if you think that, then maybe you're going to act like a dick. I don't know how else to say it. Anyway, back to this moment in time. Chaol and his father get right into it, and Chaol tells him he isn't leaving until he finds a replacement because he is the... What's it called?
What? Lord Chaol? Of NEL? Captain of the Guard.
Captain of the Guard, thank you. He's the captain of the guard.
Yeah. Well, we say that in very loose terms.
Oh, we do. 100%. Yeah. So he's the captain of the guard. So he wants to find a replacement before he leaves, which I think is, like, not a bad thing, but he's clearly fucking around on it. And his father realizes it.
Yeah.
So his father is leaving in, like, next week or something. So he's like... That's not what we agreed on. You were supposed to come with me.
But did they give the timeline in their deal? Because if not, that's his own fault for not specifying a time. If I've learned anything about deals with fae and wishes with genies and all of that, you gotta be specific.
This is 2 men, but I'll give that to you. Because it's basically what Chaol says to him, but... Before that, he starts thinking of how the past few nights he's gone to Aedion's parties and he's never found Aedion at them. But everybody has seen him. And he, like, has been everywhere, but he'll show up enough so that everybody thinks that he's still there.
Yep.
Chaol kind of has a wild idea to see if he can figure out how to free magic because he knows that it will help Celaena and Dorian. Dorian being the prime
person here, yeah.
Yeah. And he remembers that Celaena told him that the rebels knew how to free magic. And they also knew where Aelin was, which was a lie. So he kind of is like taking it with like a grain of salt, but he's also like, maybe they know something. I should check because he doesn't want to leave Dorian. Basically, his whole thing is he doesn't want to leave Dorian fucked over. And in the current state of affairs, Dorian has magic and he's fucked over, and it's a whole shit show.
Yes,
he doesn't want to leave him like that, which is very nice.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah. Obviously his father is annoyed. He wants more time. and he says it wasn't part of their deal. So he asks why Chaol wanted to send his woman away if he isn't a man of his word. But he's kind of like, I think he's kind of saying, like, was that for a different reason? Like, were you sending her away from some other reason? If you're not a man of your word, then why did you send her away if it wasn't to murder the prince and everything and get the battle plans? Why were you doing that? If you're not a man of your word, if you're not going to come back home with me, then was that for an ulterior motive as well? And you're like, his father is actually, like, kind of
spot on.
Yeah, he's not wrong. But Chaol is just like, he kind of counters and he says he'll be with him forever. What is another month? And he kind of wonders why his father wants him to go now. And I don't think we really get an answer for another 2 books. It's kind of wild. Unless we do. I don't know.
We get an answer in 2 books?
I think so, in like 2 books' time.
Oh.
Well, actually, I think we get an answer. The only answer I can think of is in Kingdom of Ash. So that is like literally well more than 2 books. That's like
4 books.
Too many books. And if you read the prequel, is that 5 or is that? Yeah. Who knows? So tangent. But Jeff read Throne of Glass, and then I was like, oh, Lily has Crown of Midnight. You need to read need to read the prequel, because that's all we have. He started the prequel, and then yesterday he was like, what's that book that I started reading on your phone? Because we went camping like 2 weeks ago and had no service, no phones. And I gave him my phone, and I had the Hunger Games on it. So he started reading the Hunger Games on my phone. So he's now started reading the Hunger Games, and I'm like, oh my god, he hates Assassin's Blade.
Yeah. He needs to get back on Assassin. He needs to start reading Assassin's Blade again. Hate is not an option.
I know. But now he's reading...
Tell him the Hunger Games can wait.
He's reading the Hunger Games. We also got Crown of Midnight today, though, so it's fine.
Oh, lovely. So he can start that tonight.
Yes, he'll start it. Okay. So his father then puts a letter on the table, and it's from his mother, and he says that, like, his mother wants to see him, but Chaol says he doesn't want it, and he has too much to do here before he can leave. And, like, he knows that his father knows that he wants this letter, but he can't show weakness. And you're like, I don't know. I think I just take the letter. I would just take the letter and say I'm still not coming. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I guess they haven't spoken at all since he left to be Captain of the Guard. Like, and forfeited the title of Lord of Aniel.
Yes.
So, like, and I guess they were decently close. So his dad definitely knows that, like, he wants the letter. Like, this whole, like, being strong and being tough, and it's all fucking bullshit.
They basically just bargain, and he says that he's gonna stay here for 2 months, but he now owes his father a favor. And his father's like, you're super tight with Dorian, like, this is gonna go in my favor. And his dad is just a piece of shit.
Yeah.
We go over to Sorscha's point of view now, which I think is a point of view we haven't really had.
I think very briefly, but not, like, excessively.
Yeah. So she's been called to the prince's chamber, and his hand and lip are injured, and she thinks it's likely from sparring, and she is super crushing on him. She thinks of him, like, he smells good, and she's thinking of him bathing, and then she starts to think of him naked, and then she's like, whoa, stop that.
Yikes.
But she works silently and thinks of her childhood, and her parents died, and there was apparently a massacre in the city square, and it wasn't until the castle and where she is now that she started to enjoy talking. So, like, after she was pretty young when her parents died, and then she was a refugee, one would assume, and she, like, hasn't enjoyed talking to people. So, like, silence isn't bad for her, which I think is completely fair.
Yeah.
Like, she's not as awkward with silence as someone like Dorian, who has probably been coddled and, like, all the things that princesses are. You know. Dorian asks where she's from, and she tells him a small village in Fenharrow. And he asks if she always wanted to be a healer. And she says yes, but he can tell that she's lying. Which is kind of interesting, because she doesn't say what she would have preferred to be. And, like, we don't really get any more about this. Ever we do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But just, like, in this moment, she doesn't say, oh, you're right, I did lie. I would have preferred to be this. But she just moves on to look at his lip and doesn't respond. And he says her name, and she, like, flutters from it because she's like...
Oh, because he didn't know she existed 5 minutes ago, and now he does.
Literally, she's been around the first 2 books, allegedly, and nobody knew she existed. And, like, I feel bad because, like, even Celaena didn't know who she was. Like, you'd think you would care. And I kind of think that is, like, I think that is an overview on the author's part, because, like, I think Celaena would have known who her healers were, and she would have known their names, and, like, you know what I mean?
I guess,
if you look at Assassin's Blade...
She was caught up in shit, though.
I know, but it's so shitty. But Sorscha thinks about how she first saw Dorian ages ago when she first came to the castle, and he saw her and smiled at her, and it was love at first sight for her. And she didn't realize he was the prince until later, and she started to cry when she realized he was the prince, because she knew that obviously
no chance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She also, for some reason, thinks in this moment about how she's not a virgin, and she's been with a guard, and she thinks back to it and is kind of like, I never want to be with a guard again because it was so awful. And it doesn't sound great.
No.
But she's kind of, like, stuck in the memory of thinking of Dorian and all of this stuff. And he kind of is like, hey, you're not doing anything.
Like, I'm still here. Please and thank you.
Yeah. So she goes back to dealing with his lip injury. And he asks her why she didn't tell anyone about him and his friends. And she said, he has always been nice to the healers, and the world needs ... And he finishes, better people. And that's, I don't think that's what she was going to say. I think she was going to be like,
the world needs you.
Yeah. It was going to be one of those moments.
Yeah. Obviously.
But then he asks if she thinks his father would use it against him.
Like, how the fuck is she supposed to know?
But obviously he's going to. But in her head, she thinks of the, like, head healer, whose name I can't remember.
No.
I think we find her out later this week or maybe next week. But she reports everything to the king. So it's, if she had have, like, dealt with any of those situations, she would have told the king about them. So
yeah,
it would have been used against him 100%. Like, everybody.
Yeah, and essentially I feel like that was kind of a warning too. Like, if you ever get the head healer, she'll tell on you hardcore. So, like, watch out.
Yeah. Dorian asks her if her village still exists, but it doesn't. And she tells him that her parents died, and it was in the city immigration purge. So I guess they came to Rifthold and then were killed, which is kind of
awful.
Even worse than... I don't know if it's worse than burning down a village, but it's very bad.
Like, Fenharrow still exists, though, as a country. Like, it's obviously under Adeline control. But, like, why would they go to Rifthold? Like, the place that just, like, took over your country. Why not go to, like, your capital city? Like, I don't know. We haven't been in the situation, so we can't judge. But, like, if a country literally just massacred destroyed and overtook my country, I wouldn't go there.
No. But when you think of what, like, she's actually doing...
Yeah, but her parents took her there when she was small.
They were like, and now you will. I don't know. It's hard. But he asks her why she would ever work in the castle. When they're the ones that killed her parents and destroyed her village. And she says she had nowhere else to go.
Valid point.
And it reminds him of Celaena when she said that she had nowhere to go after Nehemia died. And he's like, feeling a lot of empathy.
Yeah.
But Sorscha tells him, like, it wasn't him who did it. Like, he's not the one that destroyed the village. He's not the one that has done any of this. And he can't really deal with it right now. So he just thanks her and dismisses her. And she leaves, and she's very worried that he'll never call on her again and that she'll get in trouble. But the next day, someone, I guess a guard, comes up and asks her the name of her village so that the prince can add it to his personal map. So he's like, he's better than we thought he was, I guess.
Yeah, but we didn't think he was awful. Like, he's actually one of the ones that we don't think is terrible. We just thought he was holding on to Celaena too tight. Like, dude, she picked Chaol. Let him go. Right? Like,
and she doesn't even like Chaol anymore, so.
No. So, like, I don't know. I think that was our biggest issue with Dorian the past couple of books, was that he was, like, obsessing over Celaena and, like, looking at her and Chaol and, like, their relationship and being like, why couldn't she choose me? And we were like, dude, get over it.
Yeah.
And now he's actually getting over it.
And I do appreciate that, like, he isn't just, like, forgetting Celaena either. It's not like he's just, like
she's not in his eyesight anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. But in this last scene, he was like, oh, she said these words and Celaena said these words and they mean a lot, both. Like, he's kind of working through it, which is good. Good on him. Good man. Work through your emotions. So now we go over to Manon's point of view, and the three clans, so the Blue Bloods, the Blackbeaks, and the Yellowlegs, have been separated for the most part. So they're either training with their wyverns, they're training with weapons, or they're training with mortal warfare. I guess just learning tactics and shit. I don't really know.
We've never been in a war before.
If you didn't know from every other fucking episode of this podcast, where we are so ignorant about any battle formation or war. Like,
oh, first world problems. Not even, because they're first world countries that are dealing with war, so, like, I can't even say first world problems.
Should we, like, start to go to the army? I don't know. I don't know what the best thing to do is. But the three clans still eat meals together, and the tensions are high, and obviously every witch wants a bowl because they're supposed to be better. So Manon is kind of close to losing it at the Yellowlegs heir.
Iskra.
She is so pissed.
But, like, to be fair, so, like, Iskra is, like, one of those mean girls, and that you just, like, can't stand the sight of. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, she's just a brat. She's, like, your quintessential, like, witch, like, Ironteeth witch, who, like, doesn't care about, like, she'll kill, like, the person standing right next to her. She has no empathy, no sympathy, no friends. Like, she does not give a fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless it, like, furthers her own wants and needs, or the wants and needs of her matrons or her clan.
Yeah, but it's even, like...
And she's in your face about it.
Yeah,
she's like...
Manon's, like...
She's like the Regina... She's the Regina George.
Yeah.
Of Ironteeth witches.
That's true. I just feel like Manon's, like, biggest hurdle is all she cares about is what her matron wants. And I don't know if it's just that, like, the Yellow Legs matron is less powerful, so Iskra doesn't care. Or, like, the Yellow Legs matron is less...
like, bitchy?
Bitchy and punishable. Like, punishing her.
But I wonder, because Baba Yellowlegs was the Yellowlegs matron.
Oh, true.
So this matron must be newish, right?
Yes. So it's like yes.
Right?
That is true. But also, so that is another point that I think we should talk about. Because, like, Iskra, she's the heir, but one would assume that the heir that has been around for as long as Manon has been around is now the lead. So Iskra must be just some witch that they were like, and now you're the heir, because the heir became the matron because the matron died.
But it could be, like, isn't it passed down from a
matriarchy?
Yes, a matriarchal line. So, like, wouldn't Baba Yellowlegs be Iskra's, like, grandmother, great-grandmother, and then the new heir would be her mother?
Ish.
Because the Blue Bloods, Petra's mother is the Blue Bloods matron.
Yeah.
And Manon's grandmother is the Blackbeak's matron. So I would just assumed that it was some blood relative to Iskra, not necessarily her mother, but it could be an aunt or something.
Yeah, that's fair. So for Manon, and I honestly can't remember if we ever talked about it before now, but she has golden eyes.
Yes.
And that is the reason she was chosen to be the heir.
Oh.
And because that is something that is prized in Ironteeth wishes. But she is also she's like, it's still her grandmother. Like, her mother was in between them.
Yeah. But her mother's dead.
Yes. Yeah. I think that you can choose a different ear. But it is funny because, like, if you're born and you're, like, third in line, as Iskra probably was, you probably aren't being raised the same way Manon as the immediate heir.
Yeah.
Crown heir is being raised.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that makes sense. Maybe that is why she's being such a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, two of Manon's 13 twins, Phaelin and Fallow, have actually brawled with the Yellowlegs, and they've been punished exactly like Astrid with the 3 public blows. So Manon is now in line for food, and the Blue Bloods are in front, as they always are. And they've ended up in first for food and for riding the wyverns, and apparently the 13 haven't even ridden wyverns yet, but all of the Blue Bloods had. So it's like an interesting way that this is working out, but I guess the matrons are dealing with it.
Yeah.
But Manon is thinking about there's men serving them food, and she's thinking about their blood, and this is where she kind of says, like, to humans, they like wine. Mm-hmm. And to her, she likes fresh blood. Like,
delicious.
This is where we're drawing the line. And I'm like, I can't fault her for wanting to kill people, I guess. I don't know. But she also thinks, like, blue bloods are apparently picky, and they only drink virgins, young men, and pretty girls. But Blackbeaks don't care. Like, they'll just
pick any old person.
Yeah. And this is another instance where we don't really get much information on the Yellowlegs, and I just think we just don't know.
Yeah.
Or she doesn't know enough about them.
Yeah.
But she's thinking all this. She's in line for the food, and Iskra, the heir to the Yellowlegs, pushes in front of her, and just like everybody starts looking because they know it's disrespectful to like. It's really like it is a cafeteria scene in a high school movie of like somebody pushing in front of the other person.
And gonna like spill your tray of chocolate milk all over your white outfit.
Exactly. It's but yeah, Iskra pushes in front of her and she tells her that she can't eat the rabble. Like, okay. And then
so she's essentially saying, like, don't eat the servers? Or is she saying, I can't eat afterwards because this...
No, she's saying don't eat the servers. She's saying we're not allowed to eat the servers.
Uh-huh. Rats.
Yeah, and they literally think of them as, like...
food.
Yeah.
Do you know what I wish...
Less than.
Do you know what I wish they did go into a bit more? I wish they went into their need / fascination for drinking human blood. Like, is this just something they like to do because they like the thrill of killing and drinking the blood is sort of their, like, reward? Or is it a need? And, like, if they drink blood, does this sate their thirst or hunger for food? Or is this a supplemental thing? Is it just simply for a power? Like... I wish we got a little bit more into this drinking blood thing. Like, they're not vampires.
No, you know what I think it is, though? We don't really get much into it, but we do hear about, like, different witches craving different things. And it kind of, in, like, the broadest terms, feels sexual to me. Oh. Like, some people don't need to have sex and everything's fine, but other people want to have more sex and like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's like something like that. I don't know. But then is it also like we learn more later about who Manon is? Is it like bred into her that she wants to kill? Yeah. It's interesting. There's a lot to it. Anyway, so Iskra is in front of Manon right now, and she mentions that her coven are going to skip their training rotation to see the legendary 13 fly again. And Manon comments that, like, Iskra and her group need all the training that they can get, and if she would like help, she could teach them a few things. And then she just, like, walks away. And she lets her cut in front of her. She lets her get her food. Like, she does well. But she kind of comes out on top on this a bit, I guess, because she didn't actually beat the shit out of her. I don't know. But we also get a taste of the fact that apparently Manon is the best flyer that existed when they actually flew on brooms. But obviously nobody's going to really believe that now until they see it. Mm-hmm. But Manon thinks that she's excited to fly again, and she says the 13 from now until the darkness embraces them, which is just a thing that they say. Yeah. Yikes. So that afternoon, they get on their mounts.
And these are just practice mounts. Like, they're not their own proper ones.
Yeah. And they're told that the beasts know what to do. They just need to make the crossing, which is just like a giant plunge between two mountain peaks. And Ashton flashes a grin to Manon with no trace of fear and just thrill. And Manon is a bit more reserved. Iskra's coven. And the other high witches are like just watching. Which like I kind of get why Iskra came to watch, but it's like you're just gonna be proved wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Because essentially, the man says that they just need to kick the sides of the wyverns and the mounts will do the rest, and they just need to hold on.
Right.
So Manon blinks a clear shield eyelid in place. So it kind of reminds me of like a shark. They got like an extra eyelid that they put in place when they bite. Yeah. But this eyelid like keeps the wind out of their eyes. And obviously it's her coven that is going, and there's another Blackbeak's coven that is going. So the 13 are silent, getting ready for this, and the other coven are like kind of iffy about what they're doing, but they just go for it.
Yep. They're just badass. All of them.
They're so badass. But Manon says, "We are the 13 from now until the darkness claims us. Let's remind them why."
Yes. It's like a pump up, like, I would get so pumped up. Like, and all I can think of is her, like, yelling against the wind. We are the 13. From now until the darkness claims us. Let's remind them why. Although I doubt she's yelling because she doesn't need to. But, like, I don't know, man. That's just a pump up phrase.
It is.
I love it. I feel like this would do me wonders if I'm having, like, a slow morning. If somebody were to just, like, call me and yell that, I'd be like, yes, okay.
I want this to become a show. Like, I just feel like there's so much to it that you could explore if it was a TV show. Mm-hmm. If you got to the third, which I know would take a lot of time and effort, but I just wish.
I wish, agreed, that, like, this is gonna be bad. I just wish things didn't cost money. And so that, like...
Of course, yeah.
So that, like, it can be made to the best of its ability without, like, having to sacrifice things because of money. You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah. 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're assuming that's what's happening with ACOTAR.
Yeah. It is apparently still in the works. I read another article about it today. So, like, it is still happening, but... And it is like a TV show now. It's not a movie.
Yeah. Which TV show is better, but...
Yeah. But, you know, from what I heard, they're still working out the script, and then obviously... It's tricky with the writer's strike going on.
Oh.
Or not even just the writer's strike. Everybody's on strike. So, like, because of that.
And AI is a huge deal, so there's so much.
Yeah, so.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
We support all striking people.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, they end up, I guess, kicking their wyverns and going, and we're obviously with Manon, and she drops, and she's dropping further and further, and then the wyvern opens its wings, and they start sailing up, and she's in the air, and it's much faster than her broom ever traveled. And Manon feels the wind like an instinct, which she thinks made her the best flyer of all three clans, and, like, she doesn't think it in, like, a cocky way. She's, like, very
matter of fact about it.
Yeah. She looks over and she sees Astrid looks near tears, and Manon says that they're gonna go test them out. So they do that, and then Manon ends up back in her grandmother's office, I guess, and she tells her that she did well today, and it was the best crossing of any clan. And she tells her that there will be war games to decide rank. And she expects Manon to win them and to become wing leader and to lead all the clans. And once they win the King's War and reclaim the wastes, it will not be a blue blood or a yellow legs on the throne. So basically her orders...
Good.
are to become wing leader and then to keep control over the clans afterwards, so that she will become the leader of the wastes, or at least rule over the Iron Witch
Covens.
So that her grandmother can rule over.
Yeah.
Is what is more likely. Yeah. So basically her grandmother says to keep her second close, and Miss Manon just says that she'll be fine. But her grandmother brings up Baba Yellowlegs, who was 700 and murdered in her own caravan. And she also tells Manon that she won't be pleased if she needs to find a new heir. And Manon is just like, cool, I agree.
It's like, okay, thanks, Grandma, bye.
Yeah, thank you. Glad you love me. You don't. Cool.
Next time, make me some cookies.
I wish. So now we jump over to Celaena's point of view, and she wakes up feeling like shit. So she thinks back. She went back and forth between her forms dozens of times, but she kind of comforts herself with the fact that she didn't lose control of her magic. So, like, she turned into her Fae form, but she didn't lose control, which is a big deal, but also a huge strain on her body. She picks up the salve that she got, but she decides that Rowan should see how awful she looks, and she also thinks that, like, she's looked worse anyway. And she thinks of a time when Arabin beat her for disobeying 2 years ago. And if you want to know more about that, you can read Assassin's Blade.
Yes.
There's clean clothes outside again, and she does feel embarrassed that she peed her pants yesterday, which is fair.
So fair. Like, even though he's an asshole, he's still super hot.
So she ends up in the kitchen, as makes sense, and Luca and Emrys are shocked by the look of her, and Luca tells her he has salve in his room, but she shuts him down and says it's none of his business, and Emrys replies it's his business when she comes into his kitchen, and she says she's been through worse, and Luca is kind of shocked by that, but, like, I get that she had a shittier life because she lived in Ireland.
Yeah.
But they should realize that. Like, I guess,
yes.
Like, has Luca not been, I guess maybe he's never met anyone else? I don't know. I feel like.
I feel bad for her because it's like, everyone thinks that because she, like, and by everyone, I mean Rowan, but, like, Rowan knows she's the princess, and it's like he thinks, like, what does he think she's been doing for 10 years?
Yeah.
Because, like, he must know, like, everybody knows the politics, that the king and queen were assassinated, and presumably her as well, because that's the prevailing theory, that she is also dead, because she's been gone.
Yeah.
So, like, he knows she's not dead. So, like, what does he think she's been doing? Like, hiding out in some, like, lord's manor, like, being waited on hand and foot? Like, what did you think happened to her?
He thinks that for sure.
Which is...
Yeah. It's... I just don't understand. But yeah. So, this day, people come in and out of the kitchen, but she ignores them, or she stares them down. And then Malachi comes in and comments on her black eye. And she doesn't say anything, but Emrys tells him to leave her alone. And he says Rowan doesn't pull his punches, and she doesn't use salve. Then he tells her his mate, which is Emrys, works too much, and not to add to it. And she says that she doesn't want to bother with any of them.
So, like, this is also a difference in character for Celaena, though, because she's not usually so curt and rude with, like, working class, like, just everyday civilians, right? Like, so, I don't know, man, she got stuff going on. She's dealing with stuff.
She is dealing with stuff. After Malachi leaves, Emrys apologizes and says that even Demi-Fae are possessive and his mate means well, but she's a stranger and she's training with Rowan. But she just responds that she doesn't care.
Yeah.
And she thinks in her head that she just really doesn't care. And it's just like, not going well in her head.
No. Her head is not a fun place to be.
No. During training, she just sits and freezes, and Rowan wants her to shift, obviously, but she refuses, and she says she tried once, but couldn't feel it, and she doesn't lose control even when he insults her aloud and in their silent, vicious conversations, and she literally has to sit through an actual storm outside. Like, it's a shitty time.
Yeah.
But after she goes back to the keep and takes a bath, she goes to the kitchens because she needs to eat. But it's packed, and Emrys and Malachi are at the front of the room, and she slips in and grabs food, and she goes to leave, but Malachi claps his hands, so she waits in the stairwell, and she sees Luca and a female being kind of flirty, and it makes her think of Chaol. And she kind of thinks, like, it's hard to look at a couple together, which you can obviously understand when you're alone. But Luca and this female are so unburdened, and her and Chaol never were like that because they always had a history, even if Chaol didn't really understand it, and still never. But then Emrys starts telling a story. He is a story keeper. So he starts telling a story about awful beings who delight in skin sewing and bone crunching. And she kind of thinks she wouldn't have come to Wendelin if she had known that these creatures were in the woods. But she goes to leave, but looks back to the kitchen doors and sees a white-tailed hawk who's sitting still and with strange eyes, and she recognizes it from the roof in Varese?
Who knows? We'll say sure.
And yeah, she thinks this is obviously Rowan's animal form.
Yeah.
Which it is. Emrys then calls out and asks her for a story from her lands. And this part is kind of heartbreaking too, because she thinks that she doesn't deserve to tell the stories. And she also barely remembers them. So she just says no thank you and leaves. So, like, they all think that she's being
a bitch.
Like, yeah. But she's actually like, I don't deserve to tell these stories because...
And obviously we're talking the stories of Terrasen. We're not talking about...
Yes.
Our Adderlin stories.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's unfortunate.
But, like, at the same time, if she doesn't open up, nobody can help her. Like, it's not their fault. They're trying to include her, and Emrys is being a sweetheart and a doll, and is, like, he's trying so hard to include her and be welcoming, and she's just shutting him down, like, every second. But, like, how the hell is he supposed to know?
Yeah, completely agree. He's very sweet.
He is very sweet.
We go over to Dorian's point of view now, and him and Chaol aren't the best of friends at the moment, and he doesn't currently have to deal with Aedion, so he's been sparring with the guards in the morning, mostly so that he can get to see Sorscha afterwards when he's injured, which is like... not the best move.
Well, like, it's sort of a strain on the resources, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's like, hey, you beat me up so that I can go get healed. And it's like, other people might need those herbs, sir.
Yeah, just wait.
Okay, I'm waiting.
He can't really stop thinking about how similar she was to Celaena when she came to his room after Nehemia, and he feels guilty for ignoring Sorscha over the months that she's helped them, which is 100% fair. He should feel guilty for not noticing her. So should Chaol, and so should Celaena. This is a plot point that I don't like. But anyway. Today he goes to the catacombs and he has a sore wrist. But there's not much that she can do. So he kind of like moves close to her and asks what she's working on, and he kind of knows that he's making her flustered, but he thinks that she looks so pretty. She starts making him a tonic and asks about his friend the champion, if she's well, but Dorian says she's gone for a few months and can take care of herself. And then she asks about Fleetfoot, and Dorian says that her leg healed well thanks to Sorscha, which we all cared about.
Yeah. Make sure Fleetfoot is okay.
100%. She asks about a beast prowling the halls near Yulmus and killing people, because obviously during the first book, many people died.
But no one seemed to investigate things.
Exactly. And then she asks about Fleetfoot looking like he was bitten by somebody, and he tells her it was 2 different creatures, but they've both been dealt with. And she asks if his father would punish him if he like talked about what actually happened in both cases, and he says yes. And Dorian like starts to think about specifically when Fleetfoot got injured, when Celaena had opened the portal and everything went to hell, and he starts to feel ice in his veins, and she asks if he would have killed her, and she means, that was confusing. So Sorscha asks if the king would have killed the assassin,
right?
We'll say, if he knew what had happened. And Dorian doesn't answer, but then she asks, would he have killed the captain? And Dorian doesn't answer, but in his head he's like, yeah, he would have killed Celaena, he would have killed Dorian. Chaol. Maybe Dorian too. We don't really know. If he knew what happened, he probably would have killed them all.
True story.
But Dorian can't control himself. He can't think. Like, everything is a shit show. Ice is going crazy. And his magic just erupts. So we go over to Sorscha's point of view. Yeah. And she's in Amethyst's office. And this is the head healer, I guess. Sorscha is currently in trouble for slipping and ruining all the potions and equipment. And Amethyst is also pissed that, like, the prince saw it all happen.
Yeah.
But apparently the prince still wants Sorscha to treat him, which I think is just, like, a terrible thing for him to have said, because obviously it makes it seem like they're sleeping together.
Yes.
Sorscha thinks of the moment of the wind overtaking everything, and she hid under the table, and she saw Dorian's eyes light up before the explosion. Then he like went under the table to help her, and like it was like a sweet moment between them, but she was fucking terrified. But Amethyst tells her that she isn't allowed to interact with patients outside of work, and she assures her that isn't the case. And Amethyst tells her, like, the prince has a reputation with women after all. And there are many other pretty women here that aren't you.
Yep.
Which is shitty. But after the accident, Sorscha, like, saw that Dorian was scared and knew he didn't mean to do it. So she got him to help her make it look like an accident and told him that she would try to help him suppress his magic after today. So, that's good.
Yeah. So, like, can I just add? So, like, this is what I was talking about when I said that, like, you really, like, you want to keep getting back to Celaena's story, but it keeps jumping point of view. So, like, we had Dorian's, then we had Sorscha's, Now we're going to have Chaols. Then we're going to have Aedions. All before we get back to Celaena. Like, and no, Manon was first. But, like,
I just don't care about any of them.
No, I don't either. Just, like, I don't care.
Give me my baby girl.
Yes. This is what I mean, though. Like, it's not just, like, one or two little sections and then you get back to her. No! This is 4 other point of views before we get back. I'm like, just come on, man.
And it's not like it changes every chapter, because, like, inside a chapter it could have 3 point of views, and then the next 2 chapters could be the same person, and you're like,
yeah. And it's not like that much happens in Adarlan, in Rifthold. Like, not that much has gone on with them so far.
No.
Dorian fights, so he goes to get injured. Or goes to get healed after he's been injured.
Yeah.
Sorscha thinks he's cute. They had an accident. There we go.
Here we are.
Here we are. In 3 sentences, I've done those entire, like, however many pages of a chapter.
Yeah. That's a lot. So we go to Chaol's point of view now.
God.
Although this one I think is kind of a bit more fun, but he follows Aedion to the slums where he's currently meeting with somebody, and he originally saw Aedion play his part at his party, and then he stumbled out of there like he was drunk, only to a few blocks later walk like a normal person and be completely fine. So he knows that it's all been a ploy.
Yeah.
Aedion meets with somebody that has twin blades on their back, and they talked for a bit and then walked to an abandoned building, and Chaol follows, and he kind of realizes that this is likely a rebel group, and he doesn't notice when somebody puts a dagger to his side.
Haha! That serves you right, Chaol.
Dumb.
Sneaking up on
That's not very
people.
smart.
It's rude is what it is.
He ends up being brought into Aedion and whoever he's with, but he thinks of the last time that he saw these men, and it was when Celaena, who is their queen, was killing them.
Yeah.
For him.
So yeah, they kidnapped him, and she went in and spreed.
Lost her shit, yeah. Which is
valid.
Yeah, it's something she's obviously also going to have to deal with, is that she killed people that would actually follow her, which is not great.
No.
Aedion, an old man, and the man with the 2 blades are there, and Chaol tells them that they can't trust Aedion, and the king has him on a leash. And he looks to the ring on Aedion's finger, and Aedion is kind of surprised by that. Aedion then explains the king gave him a ring when he gave him the sword of Orinth, which is the rightful sword of Aelin. It's the sword of, like, the kingdom, I guess. So when he got the sword, he also got this ring. But he could tell with his partial fey senses that it was strange and it smelled weird. So he made a replica and he threw the original one into the sea. So he is wearing a black ring, but it isn't the king's original ring.
Lovely.
And yeah, and that's when Aedion realizes that, like, the ring is clearly a magical leash, and he thinks there's no magic. So, like, how did the king make a magical leash without there being magic? So there's something
not right
going on. Yeah. And he also obviously realizes that Chaol was hoping to win favor with the rebels by saying that Aedion was fucking them over.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because obviously you would expect Chaol to be loyal
Yes.
To the death to the king. But Aedion says the rebels have told him his assassin friend is a sympathizer, and she, obviously Celaena, gave Archer information in multiple cases, and she also let rebels sneak out. And Chaol doesn't respond, because we're in his point of view, he realizes that he fucked up by saying too much back then. Aedion also says that they know how this has to end. Either they torture him and then kill him, or he tells them everything and then they kill him, and it is swift and painless. So, like, Chaol is not leaving here. So, Chaol's kind of thinking to himself that he knows he can't die here with Dorian in danger. He needs to release magic to help him. So he does the only thing he can, and he says that Aelin is alive.
I know. I do like that.
Yeah. And I like it also. We pop over to Aedion's point of view now. And not to skip too far ahead, but like they torture him and he will only talk to Aedion. Like, he refuses to tell any of the other people who she is, which I kind of appreciate. Like, he would have died to keep it a secret, even after telling them that she was still alive. I like him a tiny bit more in this instance.
Ugh.
But in Aedion's point of view, he's thinking of the names that he has been given. So it's Wolf, General, Prince, Traitor, Murderer, Liar, Deceiver, Trickster, Otterland's Whore. And he didn't mind it. And he has used, like, these names, especially being Otterland's Whore, to keep the bloodshed to a minimum. And it's mostly been a lie. So, like, he thinks about they didn't actually kill people on battlefields. They just staged it all. He says half the Bane are rebels, the other are sympathizers. And he starts to worry about the names now because he thinks of, like, cousin, kin, protector. Those are the names that he loved and that he thought were going to be his future. Like, Aelin was to be his queen, and he was to one day swear the blood oath.
Not his queen like marriage. His queen like his ruler, and that he would serve her. Yes, although I think it says in the future there was chats about maybe like aligning them in marriage, but that's just weird because they're cousins.
Yeah. There were chats about that, but I think it was just to distract from the fact that she's technically related to who she ends up with. Mm-hmm. He also thinks of Ren Alsbrook, who is the guy with the two swords, and he's the heir of Lord of Alsbrook, and he has trained with Aedion their entire lives, and when they were children, they were rivals, and they didn't really get along. But Ren's parents, like, when magic and everything got fucked up and disappeared, Ren's parents distracted the people trying to kill them so that his grandfather Murtagh, who is the old man, could get him out. And Ren got the scar on his face at that time. Aedion had, like, thought that they were both dead up until this point, which is also sad. Aedion's plans coming here were also kind of to just, like, kill anybody that has been lying about Aelin being alive. But he realizes, like, Archer is already dead and he's the only one that was lying about it, and she actually is alive, so it's, like, interesting to him. But he kind of thinks back to getting the sword, and he has a lot of guilt for not protecting Aelin. He was only 13, but he thought that she died, and now he carries the sword as a reminder. it's kind of an interesting contrast of like how people deal with trauma. Like Celaena obviously carries a lot of guilt.
Yes.
Or she wouldn't be who she is. But he carries guilt over Aelin's death when he was 13. And he is still living his life as who he is. And like, it's just interesting to look at them both in the way that they've gone forward. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting, but at the same time, like, they were thrust in such completely different situations. Like, he had to, like, I don't know if he had to watch, but he had to experience his parents' deaths, like, because his parents were assassinated, I believe, publicly.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they weren't killed in their beds the way Aelin's parents were. Like, they weren't assassinated that way. They were put to death in a public execution. And then, like, he had to stand there and wait almost for, like, his own fate to be decided. Right? Like, he had to stand there and wait for the King of Adarlan to decide whether he should die or whether he should live. And, like, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like that definitely does stuff to you.
Oh, for sure.
And
I think it all does. Like, I'm not saying anyone is not dealing with their trauma the right way.
But, like, it's heartbreaking when you think about it and think about how he is still fighting in his own way by trying to, like, save lives in Terrasen, like, where he's stationed. Like, he's still, you know, meeting up with rebels. Like, even though he has had literally everything taken from him, he is still fighting.
Yeah. And he doesn't care what people think about him. And, like, until this moment in his life, he has not really cared what people thought until he realizes that the one person that, like, I say loved, but, like, in a platonic, like,
family.
You're going to, family, but it's even more than that, because it's, like, it was his future. He was going to protect her. That was his role, his future, his everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot. But trauma shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, his whole thing is he wants to carry the sword as a reminder. And when he dies, it'll be a reminder that he should have saved her.
Yikes.
When he was 13. And you're like, Jesus Christ, you couldn't have saved somebody at 13.
No.
Like, you were 13. Anyway. Now we get to the point where Chaol would only tell Aedion about who Aelin was, and Ren, like, tortures him and shit, but he's like, nope, only telling him. But he does tell everything to Aedion, and Aedion feels shame over who he is, but, like, they're both murderers who work for their enemy, and I know it's very easy. Obviously, in this situation would feel the same way, but I don't know.
You did what you had to do.
Feel a bit of empathy for yourself.
Yeah.
I know. I just, like, I know we're reading it. We can feel it, but they both did what they had to do. Chaol's kind of an idiot for telling him. But Chaol says that she would want him to know. She'd want Aedion to know that she's alive.
Yeah.
And Aedion kind of realizes that he can't kill his, I guess, queen's
person?
Fuck buddy? I guess he doesn't really know where they stand, which is fair. Aedion kind of thinks of the power that she used to had and how they had talked about sending her away to learn when she was younger, but it was never to Maeve, and now that is where she is, and, like, it's not really what they would have hoped for. Like, obviously they wouldn't have sent her there if they had a choice, her family, but Aedion's powers are Like, he doesn't have a second form. He just has strength, speed, hearing, and smell. But, like, he doesn't actually have any extra powers. Yeah.
So he can definitely smell when people are aroused. You gotta make sure he can smell that.
Stop.
I'm sorry.
I'm not going back into this.
I'm sorry. It's funny. I was actually talking to my husband about something. I'm not even 100% sure what. And I was explaining to him that how, like, they get... Oh! I was explaining to him about our last book,
Yes.
Kingdom of Flesh and Fire.
When we had the entire conversation about
yeah,
it.
when
Yes.
we had
I also did the same
questionable
thing with Joe.
consent thing. And I was trying to explain it to him about how, like, you know, he woke up and first he was angry, but then and I said, word for word, he scented her arousal, and his face just went, ugh. Like, I don't like that. Yeah. And I had to explain to him that, you know, he's a vampire, quote unquote, so he has heightened senses and can smell people's arousal. He hates it.
Yeah, he should hate it.
Yes.
So after that exact same recording, Jeff was like, "How was your podcasting?" And I was like, "Why? Did you hear me yell out pussy juices?" He was like, and I was like, "Oh, we were talking about smelling arousal." And he was like, "Oh, like pheromones?" Fuck. Yeah, I guess that's what they smell. Is it like pheromones? Like, that makes more sense than actual pussy juices. I know, but pheromones makes more sense. Anyway. So Aedion asks if she's coming back, but Chaol says he doesn't know. And Aedion can see that Chaol loves her. But Aedion asks why Chaol is tracking the rebels, and he says he wants information. And he asks about the rings, but Chaol says he wants to make a bargain. So now we go over to Celaena's point of view. And a week passes, and Celaena has failed to shift. And she listens to Emrys's stories every night, and Celaena recognizes most people, but she steers clear from them. Luca is literally the only person to try to talk to her. And he even tells her, like, that he used to struggle, and if she needs to talk, he's around, but she, like, completely shuts him down.
Sin.
And it is a
Poor
sin.
boy.
She also hates seeing couples together, especially Emrys and Malachi, because they're the ones that I guess she sees the most of. And she can't get away from them. But also, Rowan listens to the stories as a hawk, while she is listening to Emrys tell his stories. So Rowan is also interested in these stories. Training is going very poorly, and Rowan threatens to bring her back to the Barrows, but backs off when she says she'll slit her own throat, which I guess is fair. But he does make her chop wood so that she is useful. So I guess she is getting stronger again. On her 8th day here, she asks Rowan to shift so that she can watch, and he is kind of bitchy and tells her that, like, she can't give orders, but he does show her, like, he's just saying it to be shitty, because he does actually do it, and it's just a flash. After he flashes back to his human self, she asks him where his clothes go. But he just says he doesn't care. And he looks so soulless. And she kind of wonders, like, what happened to him? Because he clearly doesn't care about anything to be, like, this apathetic.
Right.
Which is interesting. Maybe he also has trauma.
Who knows?
Which doesn't make it okay for how shitty he fucking is. She asks what he could have done to have Her Majesty punish him by working with her. And he tells her to watch her tone. But she continues, and he grabs her tongue with his fingers. And I don't know if you've ever had anyone grab your tongue with your... You can't do it to yourself. If somebody else did that to you... My sister did it once, and your instinct is to just pull in. It is so awful. It is so bad.
Really? I feel like so you can't hold on to it because it's wet.
No, you can't.
Oh.
My sister once grabbed my tongue and kept it in her fingers. It was very bad.
Yikes.
Yeah. Yeah. She fights back, and they get real close, and he does let her tongue go, and she calls him a foul name, and he bites her in the neck, like in between her shoulder blade and her neck, like in the erotic place of the neck.
But it's not in an erotic way. He's doing it.
No. He is fucking pissed.
Yeah. Which is...
It's like... Sorry. She literally thinks it's like primal aggression. Strong and claiming pinning her to a tree.
Yeah.
These are literal words that they've used in this book.
Yeah. So, like...
Claiming.
Yes.
Strong, pinning, tree.
Yes, I wouldn't mind this. But to be fair, this is the big issue that a lot of people have, Rowan. Right? Like, the whole... You guys can't see her, but Catherine just mimed, like, eating a corn on the cob or something.
Yeah. This is my kink. I don't know.
I agree with you. Like, it's hot as fuck. But it's also not done in an erotic way. It's done in abusive way, which is what a lot of people have
100%.
problems with. Because
100%
for him, it's not sexual. For him, it's completely, you are pissing me off, I'm going to punish you. And
and for her, it's not sexual either.
For some of us,
but
we'd
for
be
me,
like, yes, punish me.
Yes.
But,
no.
You know, it's not for them. And that is where a lot of, I think, problematic behavior for Rowan stems.
Yes.
But,
and I completely agree.
At the same time, we need to understand that SJM wrote these characters not as humans. Like, they're not human. We are giving them human characteristics because that is what we, like, relate to. But she didn't write them to be human. They have animalistic instincts in a way that we do not. So, while I appreciate and agree that if they were human, this would be a very problematic thing. But they're not human.
It would also just be weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have sharp toothes. I don't think I could break skin.
No, it would just be weird. But yeah. And it is, it's the fact that it's done in anger and it's done, but it's also those words, the words that are put to it. You can't fault her for catching feelings. I'm just saying. It's not good.
Or is it very...
But I guess the thing that's not great about it is that it does make her angry. Yeah. So she shoves him back and she wants to rip his throat out. And she shifts and roars because her shifts have been related to being angry or upset or whatever. So, like, she is shifted in this moment because he made her angry. And she goes to lunge at him, but she's realized that she's shifted. And, like, her bite mark heals. And she then starts to panic because she's worried about her power. And she pushes it down because they are in the forest and there are so many trees and she can't lose control. And Rowan tells her to let it out and he, like, kind of pushes at her to be like a piece of shit. But in this point, like in this case, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
her magic ends up exploding in a blue flame, and it's rushing for Rowan, but then it's gone, and so is the air in her lungs, and she falls to her knees, and he gives her back air because I don't know if we got into his magic before now, but his magic is to do with air. So he literally took the air away, like the oxygen out of the air. So like a fire can't burn. Like he's the perfect person to work with her.
Very helpful, which is probably why Maeve paired them together.
Part of the reason. Also, why the world did. Oh. Yeah. So that's likely the reason with it. And she realizes that. Because she kind of wondered why Maeve didn't put someone who actually knew how to work fire magic.
Yeah.
So that she could learn from them. But this makes more sense because they can actually stop her fire. And I guess a fire magic person could do too, but it's more rare.
Yeah.
But he asks if her lover knows what she is, and she says that her lover knows everything. And Rowan tells her that he won't bite her again, even if it's her only way to shift, because you don't bite the woman of other males.
Yeah.
So she says that they aren't together anymore, and that she's talking about Chaol. Chaol's safer if he's as repulsed by her as Rowan is. And Rowan tells her, at least she's learned one lesson. The people you love are just weapons that will be used against you.
Yikes. So he also has some damage.
So much trauma. She kind of spirals in this moment. She kind of realizes that she forgets what Nehemia looks like. And she starts to drown in this realization. And Rowan is asking her if she's listening, and she tells him to bite her, but he says maybe he should give her the lashing she deserves. Yeah, and she tells him she'll skin him alive if he ever tries to.
Yeah, and if you've forgotten, she was whipped very heavily at Endovir, the slave camp, so lashing and whipping and all that is a serious trigger for her. But again, he doesn't know that.
No. Not that you should ever.
No, I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying.
No.
He doesn't know that yet.
No. And she also, she has, the 3 scars on her back. It's not great. But she, during this conversation, had turned back into her human form. And he's asking her to shift again. And he says if she doesn't, she's pulling double duty in the kitchen. But she doesn't give a fuck. She's like, yeah, cool. I'll pull double duty. Great. But then he tells her she's worthless. And she says she knows that. And he says she would probably be more useful if she did die 10 years ago. And she says that she is leaving.
Yeah.
So that is
she's had enough
thing to say to somebody. Yeah. That's not great.
You're better off dying as a child. You're welcome.
Yeah. Which, is clearly not true. Because even if she does nothing in this life, at least she lived past, being a child. Even if she doesn't fulfill everything that everybody wanted her to. Obviously that's not what everybody's going to hope for her life. But, anyway. She goes back to her room, and she packs, and she goes to leave, and Rowan asks if this is what she does, runs when it gets hard, and she tells him he's free of his obligation and to just go to hell. Which is fair. And he mentions, weren't you looking for answers from Maeve? And she says she was just trying to save the world from the king, and he asks, why bother? Maybe the world isn't worth saving. And she she knows he means it. Yeah. So, he's almost more fucked than she is. It's...
Yeah.
Not an excuse. Yeah. It's just so fucked up. But she tells him she made a promise to save her friend's kingdom, and he asks about her kingdom, But she says they're better off without her. And he asks why she has to, like, save her friend's kingdom. And she says, because she's dead. And she's left with her own worthless life. And, like, she just walks away from him.
Yeah.
So shitty.
And you would think that, like, this...
After this, he'd be less of a
Yes! Because, like, she's literally admitted to him, like, I know I'm a piece of shit. I know my life is worthless. Like, I know I'm better off dead. Like, you're not telling me anything new. But I have to do this for my friend because she is dead. And, like, you would just think that he'd be, like, a little bit less shitty. He's not.
Enemies.
He is not. Enemies.
So she leaves. She's walking back to the town.
Yeah.
The way she knows how. Yeah. She makes weapons from rocks and wood. And when night falls, she finds a shallow cave for the night. And she makes a fire. And she notices the little folk watch her. But they're, like, being sweet, so she doesn't mind. She kind of thinks, like, she needed to leave there before Rowan broke her into so many pieces that she'd never recover.
Yikes.
Which is a sad thing to think. Yeah. It's so sad, especially knowing where the entire series goes. Like, the fact that that is where she is right now is depressing. Yeah. But she ends up falling asleep from exhaustion, but is woken by the sudden silence.
Ooh.
Spooky.
Yes. So obviously she's in this cave, she's sleeping, and she wakes up and, like, I don't think that's something that I would ever wake up to. I wouldn't wake up because it was so quiet. I don't think ever. Anyway, so
I've never heard quiet. I sleep with a sound machine. I don't know what quiet sounds like.
Anyway, so she wakes up because she notices the entire forest has gone quiet. Like, there's no rustling, there's no, like, crickets making that weird sound, like, no owls, like, there's nothing, which is weird. Like, normally, like, even the wind rustling through the branches you would hear, but she doesn't hear any of that. And then she smells something in the air, and she says it's, like, old and earthy and hungry. I don't know how something can smell hungry.
Well, I guess if you maybe have face senses, you can smell.
You can smell hunger. Great.
I don't know. Well, you can smell fucking arousal. Maybe you can smell hunger. Sorry, I didn't mean to be so aggressive.
Anyway, so this is when she realizes that the fire was probably a stupid mistake. And when she came through with Rowan the first time around, he refused to light any fires. And she's like, well, hot damn, maybe I shouldn't have.
Maybe he had a point.
And she also remembers him saying something about how, like, skinwalkers are on the prowl. So we're not 100% sure what they are yet. But, so she leaves her cave and she's like, shit, I should probably go. And she travels far enough from it and looks back. And she can see the light from the cave. So, like, she was essentially like a beacon. Like, just calling anything dark and scary to her cave. Yeah, not smart on her part. As she's looking back, she actually sees 3 figures approach the cave. So she tries to get even further away, because she's not a crazy amount of distance from the cave. So she uses the thunder that had started. Like, of course we get her escaping in a storm. So there's thunder crashing, so she uses that to cover her sound. But they smell like sort of like rot. So she can smell the rot, like, surrounding her. So she knows that they're, like, on her, hot on her tail. So she's in danger, girl. And she realizes that it's actually the smell of rotten human flesh that the skinwalkers took to wear. So they're wearing other people's skin. Which is a look. It's a look.
It's such a thing. It's such a thing in fantasy books.
Yeah.
These scary things.
They sew you up to make a skin suit. Anyway, so she, like, starts running for it, and she's like, shit. So then she runs into something hard. Turns out it's Rowan. He came to save her. So he grabs her.
Is this not the same as when we thought it was a bed, but it was a man, and you're like, you run into the heart. You run into the heart, and it's a man. Yeah. It's not a tree.
What else is it going to be? Although, to be fair, trees are also hard.
Man is lizard.
Yes. So he, like, pushes them into a tree trunk. I don't really understand how. Like, what kind of a tree trunk is just open for them to just get in? Magic, sure. And he essentially... he essentially told her that she has to shift. If she doesn't, they're both gonna die. So, like, shift, please. He sort of asks, like, can you use your magic to kill them? And he says no, because they don't breathe, so he can't stifle. He can't, like, cut off their air.
Convenient.
Yes, very convenient. And also, like, he does have a drop of ice magic, but they're too powerful for that to make any difference. So, like, their only opportunity here is to run. Like, they have to run. They can't take on all three and fight them. So she's thinking that, like, she appreciates that even though he doesn't like her, he didn't leave her to her fate. Like, he still came after her to save her. Like, he didn't leave her alone. And that's a big thing, like, that she feels is important when someone leaves her versus not. So she just takes a few, like, deep breaths in, and she shifts. So she's in her Fae form, and, like, she says the skinwalkers stink even more. And, like, she can hear them coming toward her and talking about them, like, almost like it reminds me of, like, a Gollum sort of a thing. Like, oh, the precious is close by. I can smell her. Oh, she smells so tasty. Like, I'm going to enjoy wearing her face. Like,
it's also almost like when Pippin and Merry were taken by the orcs, and they were like, after, but fresh meat's on the menu tonight, boys. Yeah. But they're like,
what about their legs? They don't need those.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. Anyway, so Rowan essentially tells her that the plan for them is to run east for 1/3 of a mile for a swift river. And essentially he's like, I'm going to go first. I want you to step directly where I step. So, like, she has to step in his footsteps after he's stepped in them. Mm-hmm. And essentially, if she's captured by one, she is up a creek, because they cannot be killed by mortal weapons. So, essentially, fight to escape. Like, don't try and take one down. So, these skinwalkers, again, there's 3 of them. They're teasing them, telling them to come out. Like, come out, wherever you are. So Rowan uses his magic to disturb some branches and make it seem like they're going in a different direction, so that the skinwalkers follow that sound, and then they make a run for it. And, like, even though Celaena is in her Fae form, she's not crazy fast, because she kept tripping over stuff. So, like, even though it's only 1/3 of a mile, it's not that far. She's still struggling. Yeah. And she also thought that Rowan was slower than she expected him to be, but then she realized that he was slowing down to keep pace with her, so that he didn't, like, abandon her.
Yeah.
So she could smell and hear the 3 skinwalkers catching up to them, when suddenly a 4th one randomly jumps out at Rowan.
Of course, like you do.
Mm-hmm. So he manages to dodge the skinwalker and decapitate it, but, like, it's still twitching, so apparently decapitation doesn't even work. Nothing works. So they have to jump off this cliff to get to the river. Like, yeah, it was only 1/3 of a mile away, but it's also way far down.
Yeah.
And the walkers seem to know the plan, because they taunt them even more. They're like, oh, you think water will save you? Like, we can swim too. So, like, essentially, there's nothing they can do about it. And, like, they even said, like, we have worn fish skin when humans were scarce, so, like, swimming is not a big deal to them. Yeah. So, yikes.
Yep.
Very scary. So she knew, obviously, that they would jump after they jump and catch them, and, like, obviously they don't have a chance. So she tries to warn Rowan, like, that, hey, jumping is not going to matter. But he's already off the cliff, so she can't really tell him anything. So she's just like, okay, fuck it. So then she jumps off the cliff.
She is.
So she describes this, like, idea of a well, ripping open in her body, and she thinks that maybe no mortal weapon can kill them, but can immortal weapons kill them, aka her fire. So she yells at Rowan to shift into a hawk form because she doesn't want to hurt him. And she turns in the air. So, like, you know how when you would leap off a cliff, she, like, turns so that her back is falling. And she lets her blue flame erupt from her hands at the skinwalkers. And that's the end of that little scene. So then it cuts to them on the bank, Celaena and Rowan. And she's soaked because obviously she ended up in a river, so she was wet. But Rowan is completely dry because he transformed into a hawk and didn't get wet.
Of course he did.
So she incinerated the 4 skinwalkers. And she asks Rowan to put the fires out. Because the forest is apparently on fire on both sides of the river. And it's like a radius that's pretty significant. And she calls the power a weapon, a curse. And we're gonna get a little more into it, but, like, I gotta agree, man. Like, why would, like... I can't really get into it, because we're gonna get into it at another time. But, like, I don't know. I can't think of a scenario in which this power of hers is good. Like, I mean, I can. Like, obviously, she does a lot of good with it. But, like...
Yeah.
You know, it's...
I can understand her resistance to learning it. And, like, if she can't control it, it is a fucking shit show. Like, obviously, if you can't control it, it's like the forest fires that are taking over many parts of our world right now. Like, it is not good.
So she asks, so Rowan, like, puts out her flyer for her, but he also tells her, like, you could totally do that too if you tried, because you have the power to do that. But she sort of just ignores that comment and just asks him, like, why is shifting so important? And, I mean, obviously it allows her to access her power, which is something. But he tells her it's all about control. So, because the act of shifting terrifies her, mastering the shift is the first step to controlling her power. And he essentially says that she needs control, or she could burn herself out. And, like, she doesn't really understand what burnout is. Like, how do you burn yourself out? And you need to remember this, people. So he essentially asks her to describe her magic. Like, how does it feel? And she says it feels like a well. And he asks her if she's ever felt the bottom of it. And she's sort of like, what? Like, wells have bottoms? Like, I didn't think it had a bottom. But his response is like, yeah, of course it has a bottom. Like, all magic has a bottom. And he sort of tells her that, like, if you have a weaker gift, then your magic is easily depleted and then refilled. You can use it little by little or all at once, whatever you want. But stronger magic users, like him and his, like, little gang of merry men,
Cabal.
Yes, they can take hours to reach the bottom of their magic. And they call that tunneling down. And he admits that it takes him a full day to reach the bottom of his quote-unquote well.
And typically, because he has such a deep well, and his friends do as well, before a big battle, they will tunnel down to access it. So, like, the further you tunnel, the more power you have access to when you need it, right? It's no good just sitting there in reserves. You got to activate it. But it's not like something you have to be actively participating in. You know what I mean? Like, you can like, I don't know, listen to a show or a podcast or like, and then also be doing something else.
Down. Yeah.
So it's like that.
You could knit and tunnel down. You can read and tunnel down. You could do many things. It's not, it's a passive activity. It's like being on your phone.
Yeah. So they say that recovery for like tunneling down and taking all of your energy, whatever, can take days or weeks, which I feel like is important.
I feel like it is, but I feel like we also forget it in the future books, but let's not get into that.
So they also have a little chat about iron too. So like they've done this little crash course on tunneling. Now they're doing a crash course on iron. How like enemies will actually use iron, like clothing, iron weapons, iron, anything they can get their hands on. Because iron like blocks magic. So Rowan actually says that he was captured and held for 2 weeks in an enemy kingdom, and he couldn't use his magic because they put him in shackles from head to toe, and they were all iron shackles. So like that's pretty scary. So like it's just another little like layer of his character. Like he had it rough as well.
He's been through a bit of shit.
Yeah. He was obviously tortured, and he happened to show her one of the scars that he got from that, and it instantly reminds her of Sam, because Sam had also been tortured, which is like Sam, like she's so unhappy right now that like it just makes me sad to think of Sam. Like I want her to be happy, so that when we think of Sam, it's more of a, you went through all that to get to your happy place, but right now she's still in a really upset phase.
Sin.
Anyway, so Rowan sort of figured out that, like, I guess from her expression or how she reacted to him, like, showing her the scar, that she knew somebody that had been tortured, and he sort of asked her, like, was it you or was it someone else? And like, I mean, she was also tortured, so like I feel like the appropriate answer is both. Yeah, but she doesn't want to make it about her right now, so she just tells him that she was too late and that he didn't survive. And that's just like heartbreaking. But like, again, this is another instance where you think that, oh, Rowan is learning about her, learning she's experienced this like heartbreaking loss because he can see the heartbreak on her face. And you would think that like this whole like sharing scars, sharing stories thing would sort of open up like a dialogue between them and like maybe start to like increase their relationship and like their closeness, and it does not at all. Like it does nothing.
Yeah.
So anyway, he asks why she shifted earlier. Like, how was it she was able to shift? And she essentially said it was for survival because she didn't want him dying trying to save her. So she knew that if she didn't shift, he would probably also get caught and die, and she didn't want that on her conscience either.
Yeah. But it's important because it's like, she's like, I wouldn't have done it to save myself. Yeah. It's only because I didn't want somebody innocent-ish, innocent, to die. So, everything is heartbreaking. Yeah.
He also points out that she actually managed to control her fire better that time, and, like, she didn't catch herself on fire. She's fireproof to her own fire, but, like, she didn't engulf herself in flames, which was a bonus. Like, that's a plus.
I guess her clothes aren't fireproof.
No, but
I'm just thinking.
The last time when she did let everything go, did she burn her clothes off?
I don't know.
I don't think it said.
I think there would be more. I think she would mention it if she did burn her clothes off, but who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, he asks that if he wasn't there, would she have shifted to save herself? Mm-hmm. And oh my god, this I love this answer that she gives, just because it is so heartbreaking, and it's just like gut punches you, and like so he says, if I wasn't there, would you have shifted to save yourself? And her answer is that her opinion of herself is the same one that he has of her. So there's his answer. And, like, I could cry right now. I honestly could. Like, it's probably one of my favorite lines just because it elicits so much emotion in such a small, like, set of words.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, that's a hell no. Right? Like, obviously, the answer is no. Try again later.
Yeah. But it's another one of those moments where you're like, he knows she hates herself. You don't just hate yourself for no reason. Like, I don't know. He just doesn't want to get to know her, and he's just like, don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
It's the only explanation, really.
He pretty much tells her that, like, he's refusing to let her leave. He's like, you can't leave. I'm not letting you leave. And he gives her his cloak because she's obviously shivering, because she just came out of water and is freezing cold, plus, like, expended a huge amount of fire magic, so, like, she shivers after that. It's like aftershock. So, like, he gives her his cloak, which, again, is, like, almost like an he's, like, extending an olive branch of, like, peace and friendship. Except it's not. But, nonetheless, she agrees with him, and she follows him back to the fortress. And, of course, we can't continue with them. We need updates on our other characters.
I don't care about anyone else.
So, we are in Manon's point of view. You say Manon. I feel like I just say... Do I say Manon? I don't know what I say. Manon. I don't know. I'm gonna try, but if I slip up and say Manon... It's just my Englishness. Don't judge me. So, back to, like, all the witches. They're in, they, like, develop this routine, for about a week, flying every day to master the wyverns, and also trying their best not to, like, kill each other, the other, covens. Today's the day that they're actually picking their mounts, so it's super exciting. So there were 42 witches there to pick. So not all the witches are getting wyverns, from my understanding. It's just, like, the three, like, one coven from each, bloodline, like, 13 witches from the Yellow Legs, 13 from the Blue Bloods, and 13 from the Blackbeaks. Maybe?
Sounds like it makes sense.
So, unless that's just, like, the first round of choice.
And it might be like, the other ones can just pick from the rabble that is left. I'm not really sure.
So, the covens, the 3 sets of covens were there, plus the matrons. And so the plan was for the soldiers who were raising the wyverns to bring each one out and show off their qualities using the bait beasts, which I think you mentioned earlier.
Manon obviously still wants Titus. He's like the biggest and the most brutal. And if more than one witch wants the same mount, then the matrons would draw sticks. So that's how they're gonna.
If you get the short stick, you get the.
I guess.
Wire,
yeah,
I guess.
Yeah. That's how they're gonna make it fair, which I think is actually relatively, like, fair of them, really. Yeah, like, for such a brutal society, I would expect it to be like, fight to the death!
But that's what Manon says. She's like, I wish it was a fight. Which is just funny.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, Manon does say she would rather settle it with a fight, because she at least, like, it's not chance then. It's the best witch gets the best mount. So the bait beast comes out, and it's small, apparently like half the size of the other wyverns. Apparently, so like they all have poisonous spikes in their tails, but his has been sawed off. And one at a time, beasts are brought out to fight the bait beast. They're trained by a whistle to attack and then stop. And so, like, obviously Manon is, like, hanging back because she's waiting for Titus. And so they all like, everybody watches as witches claim wyverns. Petra, the blue blood heir, picked apparently a large female. She didn't want Titus. And Asterin, who is, again, Manon's second, picked, like, a blue, stealthy female. So Petra comes over to Manon and says to her, not loudly, but also not quietly either, that she would rather Manon have Titus than Iskra. So apparently Iskra, the mean girl Regina George, also wants the same wyvern as Manon. And Iskra essentially, like, I guess maybe hears her name, hears Titus's name, I don't know, but comes over to join in the conversation. And Petra essentially says, she's like, oh, what are you guys talking about? And Petra's like, oh, I'm just telling Manon here how I think Titus would make a good mount for her. Like, and it's essentially like proclaiming to maybe just the three of them, but also largely to everybody present, what side Petra falls on, right? Like,
yeah, which is interesting because they don't need to pick a side. Like, Petra realistically should be trying to become wing leader herself. So it's weird that she's like, I'm gonna pick a side.
Yeah, but I also, like, remember they're, like, the religious, like, I'm not gonna say peacekeepers, because they're not peaceful. They're still brutal, and they're still, like, badass, like, fighters, and they're still, like, they still like to drink blood and kill people.
Yeah.
But they're, like, the religious zealots, and they are a little bit less brutal than, and, like, I don't think they are as opposed to emotional connections.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, they will actually, like, they are okay with forming connections, and, like, they don't think they're, like, heartless and soulless.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. She probably doesn't want to be wing leader. I don't think she has the ambition. But
maybe.
Anyway.
It's just, it seems odd to, like, pick a side. It does. When you could just
100%. Like, I don't really get why she's picking a side either. I'm just...
Yeah.
I don't think she wants it to be her.
Yes. So, it sounds like Iskra is worse than we even think she is.
Yes, 100%. So, next wyvern to come out is Titus. So, he comes out and tries to hit the bait beast, but it initially ducks, but Titus just keeps going and going, hitting it, and manages to hit it over and over and over again. The bait beast is chained to the wall, so, like, it has nowhere to go, and, like, it's not a long chain either, so, like, it can't duck out of the way, really. It can't, like, run away. It's, like, pretty tightly chained. And Manon says that the way Titus attacks, like, makes it seem intelligent. Like, makes the animal seem intelligent. Like, he goes for weak spots. He goes for prior injuries. Like, the bait beast has an injury on his leg, so he intentionally goes for the leg. Like, he's attacking in a vicious way and an intelligent way. So Manon is really impressed with that. So, like, she really wants Titus. So the handler, we'll say, whistles to get Titus to stop attacking because it's like, okay, like, we don't want to kill the beast. We need it. But Titus ignores it. And Iskra is watching all of this. And, like, the way I imagine it is they're sort of on the edge and, like, everything is happening in a pit. Yeah. And then there's almost like a How to Train Your Dragon sort of scenario.
It's exactly
what I was thinking. You're
yes,
thinking.
100%.
Yeah. And then there's like a gate where the beasts are let in and out from. So the way I picture it is they're all standing on this like edge of like an open dome. And Iskra tells Manon that if she wants Titus so bad, she should get closer. And then pushes her into the pit. Great.
Good times.
So I guess Manon is sort of like, oh shit, because she doesn't have a weapon at this point, right?
She has her sword on her back,
but like,
this thing
is huge.
Literally bit somebody's in middle, and their head flew, and their legs flew, but their entire middle was gone.
Mm-hmm. So they're quite large. So she says that like Titus notices, like, obviously sees her fall in, and because of, I guess, her falling into the pit, maybe like how he's in attack mode, I don't know why, but she says that when he looks at her, he doesn't recognize her as mistress or rider, but as prey. So like, she can't command him as of now, so he is going to attack her. So she does get out her sword, and she knows she has to get over to that gate in order to escape. Titus attacks her with his tail, and Manon rolls away, and she's directly in front of the bait beast at this point. And the bait beast growls at Titus, and Manon realizes that her and the bait beast are actually allies right now. So she uses her sword to break the bait beast's chain and, like, boots it for the gate. The bait beast then tackles Titus, and they roll and grapple, and the bait beast nails Titus with his tail. But Titus gets a hold of his neck and won't let go. But the bait beast just keeps hitting it with his tail and, like, won't surrender at all. So Manon, I don't know why, like, she can get to the gate, like, they're both distracted. But instead what she does is she runs over to Titus and cuts his tail off. She says that she has no sympathy or mercy or kindness in her, but she owes the bait beast a life debt for, I guess, like, distracting Titus so she can escape.
Yeah.
So when Titus, I guess, gets his tail cut off and, like, he rears back in pain and, like, lifts his long head up, the bait beast actually grabs it by the neck and tears it out and kills him immediately. And, like, Manon is shocked. And I feel like everybody in the audience is shocked.
Well, yeah, Titus is the best of the best.
He was bigger.
And now he's just dead.
Yeah, now he's dead. But he was bigger, he was better trained, he was stronger, but the bait beast wanted it more. He was a warrior. So Manon claims the bait beast as hers. And obviously her grandmother isn't happy about it.
Yeah. Not really.
So she names the wyvern Abraxos, which I love. I don't know where it comes from, but I love the name.
Yeah.
And Abraxos comes up, like, becomes
almost a central character to the story, and everybody loves Abraxos.
As you should.
So afterwards, like, after everybody claimed their wyverns and everything is over, she tells everybody that she slipped. Because she doesn't want to give Iskra the satisfaction or give other people, like, she doesn't want to give her the recognition. Because if she tells people, oh, Iskra pushed me, then people are going to be like, wow, Iskra, like, you almost killed, you know what I mean? Like, she'll earn a certain amount of respect. And they don't, she doesn't want that to happen. So she tells everyone she slipped. And that pisses Iskra off. But Asterin, who was standing right next to her, is punished for letting Manon fall into the pit. And unbeknownst to, not unbeknownst, but like, Manon didn't realize it, but after Iskra pushed Manon in, Asterin punched Iskra in the face for pushing her in.
Fair.
But because, like, essentially the second gets blamed for everything. It is 100%. Not a job that you want.
No. It's shitty.
So, because she punched Iskra is the one that gets to do her punishment, which is 10 whips in front of everyone. So, that all happens. Her grandmother has a meeting with Manon. And obviously we already said her grandmother is pissed. I call it a meeting, more a stern talking to.
Like, punch in the face or something. Like,
Jesus. But she says that she thinks that Abraxos winning was a fluke. And, like, he might not even be able to fly because his wings have been shredded by being attacked on the daily. But, like, Manon's like, I know that he can. So...
yeah, she's got, like, a lot of faith in this guy.
So she goes to visit Abraxos and has a conversation with the overseer, who says it can be weeks or months before he's ready, and she should train with a different wyvern until then, because, like, when they all start training as a coven... she is the leader of her coven. Therefore, her wyvern is going to be the leader of the wyverns in the coven. And the overseer is not convinced that the other wyverns will accept Abraxos as a leader. But...
which is, like, not an unfair comment, really.
But she doesn't want to hear any of it. She's like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah. Also, it's not his place to tell her that anyway.
Well, he's a mortal man, so, like, what does he know?
Fuck off.
Okay, so, move on to Chaol point of view. So, Chaol and Aedion actually go into Celaena's old room and head down to the tomb. I guess Chaol is just showing him around down there, and... it is a good place for secret meetings.
It is, when someone doesn't follow you down.
Also, if you're going to do secret meetings down there, then you should make sure that nobody else knows that it exists.
Yeah.
So, they agree that they're going to share info with each other. So, Chaol shows Aedion the Eye of Elena that Celaena gave him, and tells him that it was Aedion's queen that gave it to him, and that, like, she was literally just here. But I thought they knew that already. Like, I thought he already told Aedion that Aelin...
who she is. He did.
So I don't know why this is super relevant.
I don't know.
Anyway.
I think it's just because of the eavesdropping, which is dumb.
Yeah.
It's like, let's make sure that this person, let's rehash everything we've already talked about so that if anybody is possibly listening, they'll have a complete view of what's happening.
Yeah. Because, of course, Dorian is on the stairwell listening in on this conversation.
Of course.
But, to be fair, he has been coming down to this tomb every night for the past week to look for answers after he exploded the healer room with Sorscha.
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of can't believe that the two of them are allies, considering, like, they hate each other.
Yeah, 100%.
Dorian hears Chaol tell Aedion who Celaena really is, and Dorian didn't know that at this point.
Yeah, so I remember last week, I guess, because last week was our first week, I was like, oh, maybe he doesn't tell him because we don't want it for plot reasons later for him to know. Like when he...
Correct, yes.
But that is not the case. He finds out before. So I was like, it isn't for plot reasons. It's just because he's a shitty friend.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
He's trying to keep him safe, Catherine, because, you know, he's like a 19, 20-year-old man. He can't keep himself safe.
Well, he can't, so... That's also a fact. God.
Anyway, he also overhears Chaol tell Aedion everything going on with the word keys and the gates and all that jazz. And obviously Dorian is pissed off and hurt that nobody trusted him with that information.
Of course.
And, like, I get it, but it's also your fucking dad.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like, if you knew that my dad was, like, embezzling or doing something illegal, I probably wouldn't. I'd be okay if you were trying to take him down. I'd be okay with you not telling me.
Yeah, well, I don't think you would go against your dad. You'd be like, hey, leave him alone.
Yes, but that's it, right? So, like, I just feel like he needs to be a little bit smarter here. Like, it's his father.
I know. Yeah. I do get why he's, like, if your childhood best friend who knew about your entire complicated relationship with your father, who you pretty much hate and don't want to be like, Chaol should have known that he would have not gone running to his father.
Yeah, but even less so about, like, running to his father. Like, I didn't think he would run to him, but, like, that's just not, I don't know.
Fair,
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't help you. I don't know, man. I feel like, I know, I just keep saying it. I don't know.
It's just, I get that Dorian is annoyed, because, like, they are best friends forever. But also, he also is supposed to be working for Dorian, really. Like, that is the whole point of it. So, like, they have their professional relationship and their personal relationship, and he's kind of fucked over both of them by being like, don't trust you enough to tell you anything.
Yeah. Anyway, so, like, he understands now why Chaol sent Celaena away, and that it was to keep her safe. Which is, like, good. Like, I'm glad he's finally realizing that. I wish Chaol had told him, I have
Obviously,
to keep her safe. But I also kind of wish that, like, he got a fucking clue and knew anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't that far of a leap to make.
Anyway, so, of course, Aedion and Chaol find Dorian eavesdropping on them. And Dorian finally notices Aedion's eyes. And how they're just like Celaena's. Like, now. He notices now.
Right this
like,
second.
Shit, man. And Chaol essentially has to tell him, like, hang on. Anyway, Chaol essentially says that, like, that Aedion can be trusted, and that the fewer people that know the plan, like, that's sort of why he didn't tell Dorian. He was like, listen, the fewer people that know about stuff, the better. Like, the fewer people, the tighter the leak.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know. Dorian is just, he's pissed off because, like, I guess he's thinking now that, like, shit, Aelin had been in his castle. Aelin had been in Endovier. she's a queen of, like, the continent, and he's sort of thinking, like, I feel like he's negating all that he knows about her and is now thinking of her as his enemy.
Well, yeah, so he does think the line, she said you will always be my enemy, and that kind of makes sense now. But he also says, like, they had lied to him. They had decided he wasn't to be trusted, Celaena and Chaol. They decided against him. And maybe, like, he is really pissed at her, which is, she didn't do anything.
Yeah. I mean, like, to be fair, I would totally also have a sense of, like, FOMO in this moment. Like...
Oh, of course. And especially, like, walking into Aedion, talking to him, and you're like...
You tell this piece of shit, but you
fuck?
don't tell me. But, like, yeah, so I think, you know, you totally feel, like, left out and sort of, like, a slap in the face. Mm. But at the same time, I just feel like he needs to think bigger picture here. Like, it's not all about him.
Yeah. Also, Chaol could easily have said, hey, he was gonna fucking murder me. Like, he never really brings that up, but, like... Aedion was 100% going to kill him. It was, like, a thing.
Yeah. He sort of... So, like, Dorian sort of, like, says a couple things here that, like, really, like, he's lashing out because he's angry. Mm-hmm. He essentially says that, like, he calls out Chaol for trusting Aedion because he's like, this guy is going to sell us out. And Chaol's like, trust me, no, he will not. And Dorian is just saying, well, you're just saying that because you want to be his king someday. Insinuating that he still has hopes that him and Celaena will marry. Yikes.
Just like, if that's true, he's on such a different page than her, and it's just weird.
But also, like, I think he is still holding out that hope, even though, like, remember, he is scared of her. He is scared of her half-fayness. And, like, he also is, like, a little bit disgusted by the fact that, one, that she's been an assassin, and two, that she's the Queen of Terrasen. Like, like, he's repulsed by those things. So, like, I think him still wanting to marry her, like, I do think he still does, but I think he still wants to marry the king's assassin. Like, not even. Well, the king's champion. That's who he wants to marry.
Who she was in the first book, I guess.
Like Vivian or whatever her last name was. Lillian. I was close.
You were close.
Anyway, so, like, and then it gets really funny because then Aedion's like, my queen would rather never marry than marry a lord of Aderlin. And, like, Chaol sort of, like, his heart sinks. And, like, he gets a little disappointed. He's like, oh, shit. It's probably true.
But you're like, obviously, she also tried to kill you at one point.
Yeah,
like,
dude needs to move on.
We forgetting all this? I think we're forgetting the fact that she tried to kill him.
Yeah. Anyway, so Dorian, like, also, I think I already said, like, he remembers every single thing Celaena has done up to this point. And, like, this is what really annoys me, actually, is he thinks that, like, her befriending him, her, like, getting close to him, her sleeping with Chaol, like, every single thing she has done, he is now questioning whether that's been in service to her crown.
Yeah. You can't really blame him for it, I guess, but it sucks.
I guess, but I still think it's stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I get that there's, like, a lack of trust there, so, like, yeah, you're gonna question everything they've done, but I don't know, man. Like, when you know somebody, I feel like you need to get, like, I just feel like that's a terrible thing to think.
Yeah.
Anyway, he leaves. He says, like, I want no part of your plan. I'll keep your secret, but, like, leave me the hell alone. And he just leaves. So, Aedion's point of view. Is this the first time we're getting Aedion's point of view?
No, we got it when he almost killed
Chaol.
Because he was like, I'm a piece of shit and my queen's still alive.
Yeah. Anyway, so he leaves through the secret sewer exit and he meets up with Ren and Murtaugh, and they don't fully trust Aedion. Aedion or Chaol?
Chaol, I think.
So Ren and Murtaugh don't really fully trust Chaol, so they want to know where the queen is, but he doesn't want to tell them. He wants to wait and let her tell them herself. Like, he doesn't want to share her story. Right?
Yeah. Because she also almost killed Ren at one point.
That's true. So they come up with a plan. He wants them to go find members of their court and just spread the word that she's alive, because they all think she's dead. And Murtagh argues that, like, some people are going to need proof. Like, it can't just be, hey, Queen's alive. And also, like, if she is alive, she has 10 years to account for. And Aedion's like, she was a child. And Murtagh then is like, yeah, but she's been a woman for a few years now. And it's like, no, she hasn't, sir. She's 19. Yeah. I would still call that, like, I would not call that a child. Like, I would not call that a woman for a few years. It has teen in it, yes. And, like, I love Murtagh. Like, keep my baby boy safe, even though he's an old man. But, like,
I know.
This is, like, a little bit ridiculous.
I know, but I think it is one of those, like, this is an old-timey book, and once you're 16, you can be sent off to get married. Like, I think it's that dumb shit.
I don't like it. Anyway. He also says that, like, loyalty has to be earned. So, like, he's insinuating that she can't just come up on the scene and be like, hey, peeps, I'm the queen, and everybody be like, yes, hail the queen. Right? Like,
yeah, of course.
It's gonna take some convincing. And he's also going to have, like, Aedion is going to have to convince, like, those same people of Terrasen about his own loyalties, because he has technically been a general for Adarlan for the past 10 years. Like, his nickname is Adarlan's whore. So, you know, it's one of those things, sort of like a Rhys Akatar vibe, where, like, he's got to try and convince everybody that, like, he was just doing what he had to do to help his people the way he could.
Which I find interesting, because Aedion's big thing is, like, they stage battles, and, like, the people they say died didn't die. So there have to be a lot of people who are aware, so it shouldn't really be so hard for him. Like, I don't know, like, shouldn't there be a lot of people still alive that, you know what I mean? I feel like there should be a lot of them. If we're saying full battles are staged, how is this being kept a secret? You'd think someone would have told the king by now. It's just, it's I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, so they discuss that there are 4 members of Orlon's inner circle still alive. So Orlon is Aelin's uncle, like, he was the king at the time. So there's 4 of them still alive, but they're all in hiding, so can't really find them and tell them. Vernon Loken.
It must be Locken. Sorry, I can't see it. Yeah, it must be Locken, yeah. Oh, yeah. Elite Locken, yeah.
Anyway, so Vernon Locken is still alive, but he's always been, and he's, like, ruling wherever he is as a Lord of Peranth, but he's a friend of the King of Adarlan, and, like, has sort of always been his puppet and, like, in his pocket. And actually, he's not the original Lord of Peranth. His brother was the Lord of Peranth, and Vernon Locken had him killed and took over his title. The original Lord of Peranth had a daughter, Elide. They don't know what happened to her. But she was, like, a year younger than Aelin, so she would be about 17 at this point. So obviously, we're talking about it now. It's gonna come up.
It's probably gonna
come up. They decide that they're gonna send out feelers to the lords of Surya, which is, I guess, a province in
Terrasen. Their names are Ravi and Sol. And we learn that Aedion was supposed to take the blood oath to Aelin as children, and he was supposed to be, like, her closest protector that she could trust completely. So, like, that's the life that he should have had, that he wanted, that he really wants to get back. And it's sort of all he can think about. Like, he's gonna reunite with his queen, he's gonna take the blood oath. So, sort of the way Maeve has the blood oath with, like, all of her warriors, that's what Aedion wants with Aelin.
Yeah, except for hopefully Aelin isn't going to abuse it.
Well, yes, of course.
Although I guess we don't really know if Maeve abuses it.
We infer.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they've made the plan. So fine.
I'm sure that plan will go perfectly.
Plans always do. So we finally get back to Celaena's point of view. So she is indeed pulling double duty in the kitchens, the same way that Rowan said that she would. It's been a week since the incident that happened in the woods with the skinwalkers. She still cannot control her shift. Every day, Rowan brought her to the temple ruins far enough away in case she lost control of her magic to practice. But she says that they still don't like each other, which is sort of what we already said. The temple ruins are actually the sun goddess's temple. The sun goddess is Mala, Lady of Light and Learning and Fire. So I guess Rowan takes her there thinking that it will help because this is the goddess of fire, so hoping that Aelin's control of her fire could be a little bit better there.
Which is, like, thoughtful.
Yes.
He's
a flurry of contradictions.
He has duality, and I don't understand. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, so apparently Mala, Lady of Light, is the sister and eternal rival of Deanna, who is the Keeper of the Moon. This is something that I don't understand. So these are goddesses, right? Mala, Deanna. They are the two goddesses that we're referring to. But it says in the book that Aelin / Celaena's ancestor Mab was given the goddesshood 500 years ago on her death. So, like, I don't understand how that works. Because they talk about Mab interchangeably with Deanna, and how Mab, Maeve, and Mala are all sisters, but, like, I don't understand it at all.
I guess when she died, they were like, and now you're a goddess.
That's weird.
But then, how do humans know all this shit? I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, it's a little bit about the lore that I don't understand. Anyway, besides the point. So, I guess Celaena asks Rowan how old he is, but he won't tell her.
Of course.
And
how long have you been 17?
A while. She asks if he feels old, but then he asks her the answer right back, do you feel? And her answer is that, these days, she's really glad to be mortal and only have to endure life once. Yeah. But she said before, I guess, everything happened, she used to wish that she would have time to see it all. And she hates that she hated at the time that she never would. And then she tells him that, like, she doesn't really remember the Fae from Terrasen, but also doesn't really remember them being like him. Yeah. So, like, I'm thinking, like, handsome, rugged, strong, brutal, any of those?
Super hot.
Yeah. But she said, like, I don't understand if, like, the Fae couldn't have been like him, because if they were, the king of Adarlan would have never been able to hunt them down and slaughter all of them. But Rowan sort of admits that he's heard, because he didn't really experience them, he didn't know them, but that the Terrasen Fae were gentler and relied really heavily on their magic. So once magic was gone from the continent, they didn't know how to fight against trained soldiers. And Celaena is bitter. Like, she's mad and bitter that Maeve didn't send help for the Fae in Terrasen. Mm-hmm. But Rowan tells her that, like, those Fae cut ties with Maeve. And she did open up her doors in Dornell to the Fae and said, like, if anybody can get to Dornell, you have sanctuary, you have safety. But, like, that's a far way. Like, that, it's a long way.
God, yes.
So it would have been really, really hard for them to get to her. So that's it. It's just a little bit of info. The next morning, she's doing kitchen duty, and she's actually, like, I don't know if she's getting into a rhythm or, like, she's getting into a routine, but she actually decides to, like, smile and, like, be friendly. So she's, like, passing people, and she's, like, smiling at them and being friendly. And most of them so far are men/males. And they've all sort of been giving her a weird, like, why, you know, like a look, like an odd...
Your face looks weird.
Yeah, like, what's with the look? And she's, like, she doesn't understand why they are, like, so shocked or surprised that she's smiling at them. And he tells her that she's been putting off a don't come near me smell, which is fun. Yeah. So she's been like, so her smell has been like, don't talk to me. And I just wish I could do that.
100%. So much.
Yeah. Like, oh, she doesn't want us to talk to her. Better turn around.
Please. Just assume that's the case. Everybody.
Anyway, and, like, he sort of says, like, people have been staying away from you because of your smell. Even though unattached female fae are very rare in the fortress. Like, there's not many of them around. So, like, a lot of dudes would come for
jump on
that. 100%.
Yeah.
But, like, she doesn't want to be approached. She's still in a I hate Chaol, but I still love Chaol sort of a vibe, yeah. And Rowan sort of then asks her, like, what about when you take the throne? Like, what are you going to do about an advantageous marriage? And then she thinks to herself, though, that she can't bear the thought of anyone but Chaol on her body. And I'm just like, for fuck's sakes. Like, you literally told him you would kill him, and now you can't think about anyone else but him having sex with you?
She's only ever had sex with him, I guess.
I'll give it to her, but, like...
I won't. Ugh. I think you'd just be having fantasies of Rowan, because he's so hot.
But I guess his personality stinks.
Yeah. It is unfortunate.
Yeah. So, I guess... They have something to do today. They have to run an errand today. They have to head out west to where there is a body in a stream. And it's odd body because it is the dried husk of a woman. She's like mummified, we'll say. Almost like everything has been sucked out with a straw. I know. How is that for imagery?
They definitely have a monster that does that on Supernatural.
Remember the one that used to suck the fat?
Oh, yeah.
I loved that episode.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So Rowan obviously says that they need to figure out what killed her. And Aelin/Celaena thinks that it's actually the creature that made her relive her worst memories. She smelled the body, and apparently it had the same smell as the Barrow did when she started having those visions. And it had the same smell as her parents' bedroom 10 years ago.
Which is interesting.
Which I don't really get, because dried husk that we have now versus really, like, bloody bed, like, they don't connect.
Yeah.
So they find footprints and follow them for a bit, and it leads to, like, this sea cliff. Rowan sort of tells her that this is actually the fourth body that they found like this. And, like, not only was the woman, like, a dried husk, her face was, like, contorted in this look of terror. And every body was the same. And they don't know what the creature looks like, but they deduce that it kills with fear. And they don't find anything. They just go back to the body. And Celaena's like, we have to burn it before we go. We can't leave it. And again, you think that Rowan is, like, getting a little respect for her at that. Like, 'cause she's like, we can't leave the body here. But it doesn't really manifest. But she refuses to use her magic to light the fire. But she still does, like, burn the body nonetheless. And they wait for it to burn and wait for it to be finished. And Celaena is just thinking this entire time the body is burning how, like, that body is like an empty husk and, like, stale and empty, just like her. How she is also, like, stale and empty. And essentially she loathes herself. Like, there is disdain for herself. And, like, fuck, man. She needs to see a grief counselor.
Yes.
So, this week was a little depressing, to be honest. Like, nobody is happy.
No.
Right? Like, Celaena hates herself. Dorian and Chaol are fighting and not happy with each other. Sorscha is pining. And Manon is, like, just never happy anyway.
Yeah, Manon just is getting the shit kicked out of her for picking a shitty mount.
Yeah.
Who we love.
So, yeah, it's a downer of a week.
Yeah. But, like, the first part of this book kind of is, because, like, next week, there's also a shitty part. But that's why we love it. That is why we love it. So...
It's true. I really do love it. It's depressing as shit. But I still like it. It's...
makes you feel things.
It does.
Yeah. So I guess that wraps it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in any of our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions to do on the podcast, or just in general, because we're always looking for new books, reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok. Except for that handle is different. All the other handles are Coffee and Co-Read, and TikTok is...
coffee.co-read.
Cool.
Great. So, next week, we're going to be reading chapters 27 to 38. So, make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to answer the poll. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.